And today we're talking about conflict resolution. Before we jump into that, again, let me introduce myself. My name is Justin Ahart. I'm a trainer at WorkLogic. I work with Robin Paggi. Unfortunately, Robin is not able to be here with us today. My hope is that I'm able to fill her shoes somewhat. Those are some mighty big shoes to fill. But my goal today is to help you um, with conflict resolution, if that's a problem that you're having in your workplace, or just introduce you to some skills that might make you more effective as a leader or a supervisor. My hope is that you leave here today with something to take back and add to your toolbox. So there's a big group with us this morning. That is exciting. I don't know if that means that there's a lot of conflict going on in the workplace, or people are just being proactive. Whatever the case may be, I'm very excited to have you joining us this morning. Before we jump straight into our presentation, and we do have a jam-packed presentation this morning, I want to just kind of quickly go over the webinar and how to work it and what to do, and if this is your first webinar, try to give you some helpful hints. But if you look at that panel to the right of your screen, there's a place to ask some questions. There's a place to download our handouts. That the handout is available for you. It's a PDF version, so you can print it out if you'd like to follow along. But as with every webinar, you're going to see the PowerPoint on your computer screen. If you do have any questions, feel free to type them into the question box. I will try to get to them as we're going along with the PowerPoint. Now, I am a relative rookie to the webinar game, so if I cannot get to your question during my presentation, I will check at the end of my presentation to see if there are any questions. So with that being said, let's get to it. Let's talk about conflict at 10:30 in the morning, huh? So when you hear the word conflict, what do you think of first? You think of something positive? You think of something negative? Well, I'll let you know. Whenever I do this class in person, because we do offer these classes in person, we can go to your company if you'd like to present any of the topics that you see on our webinars. But whenever I offer this class in person, the question that I always get, or the response that I always get to that question is a lot of negatives, negative results. People always point out the negative things that can happen if conflict is present in the workplace. It's natural. We think of conflict, it means something bad, right? But I want to share with you this quote, okay? I want to share with you this quote, and I want you to think about it and think about what it means. But this quote comes from David Wetton and Kim Cameron. They wrote an awesome book, Developing Management Skills. And they say conflict is the lifeblood of vibrant, progressive, stimulating organizations. It sparks creativity, stimulates innovation, and encourages personal improvement. Now, this quote directly contradicts what most people think about conflict. How in the world does conflict spark creativity, stimulates innovation, and encourages personal improvement? Well, employees having conflicting ideas and opinions can shed light and bring focus to possible improvements that can benefit the company. The problem isn't necessarily the conflicting suggestions or positions that people have at work. The problem is the way we express and handle our conflict. Okay? Sometimes managers think that the absence of disagreement is often viewed as a good sign of leadership. But in reality, research demonstrates that it's a leading indicator of being out of touch with significant changes in the marketplace. What am I saying here? Having a group of employees that are just yes people, that don't have any opposing ideas or don't take any opposing positions, or if they do have opposing ideas, they're afraid to bring them up. Having just a group, an office full of yes people isn't necessarily good. You could be missing out on tons of stuff. Your organization could be stagnant. conflicting ideas can move your organization forward if handled appropriately. But like I mentioned, conflict most of the time isn't handled effectively. And that's where we're at today. And so let's take a look at our agenda. Again, why do most people hate conflict, hate dealing with conflict? Well, it's because we handle it poorly. Handle it poorly as employees, we handle it poorly as supervisors. The organization sometimes doesn't know how to handle conflict, and so that's why we just try to squash it. We try to ignore it. We just kind of put blinders on and hope it doesn't happen in our workplace. So how do you know if you handle it poorly or you're effective at handling conflict? Well, look at the top of the screen right there. If you have employees walking around your office, grabbing each other by their hair, screaming at each other in their faces, then you probably handle conflict poorly, and it's a good thing you're here today. But this is what we're going to be talking about today. In today's webinar, we are going to be going over the different sources of conflict at your workplace. This is a chance for you to look in the mirror and do a self-evaluation to see if you're the source of any conflict in the workplace. Then we're going to talk about your usual approach to handling conflict. I'm going to share with you 5 conflict resolution models today, and we all typically have a go-to strategy, the one that we feel most comfortable with. And that's great. That's awesome that we have a strategy to handle conflict, but there's different ways to handle different things. And so if we're always going to our go-to, our number one choice, and we never explore other options, it could be a problem for us. Then we're going to talk about, we're going to go into one conflict resolution model pretty much, we're going to take one and we're going to go really in depth into it. It's called collaboration. And so when we go into that, I'm going to break down the steps for you. I'm going to give you a first-hand example of a conflict that I had to mediate at my previous employer. And then we're going to talk a little bit about expressing anger at work, because when conflict arises, typically people get angry, and it's a very valid emotion. And we don't want an office full of angry people. So we're going to talk about how we can, 1, ourselves express anger effectively, but 2, help our employees express anger. And then finally, we're going to end the presentation off with, if you have employees that are engaged in a heavy conflict or a disagreement, how to mediate that as a supervisor to move towards a resolution and not just have giant divides within your company. So as you can see, jam-packed schedule today. So first, let's talk about the negatives of conflict, some causes that happen in the workplace. And like I said, this is where I want you to kind of do a evaluation on yourself and just see, is this happening in my workplace, or am I the cause of this conflict in the workplace because maybe there's something I'm doing or saying that's creating stress? So take a little evaluation. But according to psychologists Art Bell and Brett Hart, and they're pretty famous for doing work within workplace environments, looking at cultures of high-performing organizations, they came up with their top 8. Okay, David Letterman had his top 10. I know he's not on the air anymore, but they have their top 8. So let's take a look at it. So our number 1 source of conflict is a conflict over resources. So here's the example I gave you. You go to schedule a conference room for a meeting you have, and upon arrival to that conference room, you discover that a coworker is having his own meeting there. Uh-oh. That can cause some issues, right? So lack of resources, not enough resources, not sharing resources, that can be a cause of conflict. And I'm guilty of this one. I'm guilty. This is one that I have to work on, especially now in my new role here at WorkLogic as a trainer. I'm guilty of being a printer hog. I'm going to confess it to the webinar world. I'm a printer hog. And what does that mean? Well, when Robin and I do our trainings, we bring all of the materials to our clients. And so we bring the PowerPoint handouts, we bring other handouts, we bring lots of stuff, lots of resources for our training clients. Well, what happens is I use the copy machine a lot. And I know that sometimes I'm causing some issues in the workplace because we have one copy machine at work. And it's a great copy machine, but everybody's linked to it. And so when someone needs to print or make their own copies for their own job, I'm over there hogging it up. So I am part of the cause of conflict that can happen in our workplace. Luckily, I've identified that. I've been able to put together some strategies to eliminate that, but that was a source of conflict for a little bit. And so that's the whole idea. When we're going through this list, is not just say, oh, poor me, or shame on me, I'm causing conflict. No, it's okay. Identify that I am the source of conflict, and what can I do to eliminate that? Because you don't have to resolve conflict that's not present. So one of the things you can do is eliminate it. Don't allow it to pop its ugly head up in your workplace. The second one is work styles. So here's an example, and I know this happens in the workplace. You like to listen to your radio in your office while your office mate needs absolute quiet to work. So that's just one example of conflicting work styles. But yeah, I mean, Robin and I kind of deal with this. Robin has to have music playing in the background when she's working, and that's fine. Luckily, I don't mind it, but if she had another office mate that didn't enjoy music or needed absolute silence to complete their work, they would have some issues there. And there's all kinds of things that go along with work style. Maybe how loud someone talks, maybe the way they, uh, why their desk is situated. A lot of different work styles can cause issues in the workplace. Perceptions. So you and a coworker have different understandings of a situation, and you both know that you're right. I used to work for an organization, and I was a manager there, and we have about 5 managers that had the same position that I had, and we all were responsible for different locations throughout Bakersfield. And we all had goals. We all had standards that our locations had to meet, but each one of the managers kind of got their locations to meet their goals differently. And one of the things that would pop up is, we would think, well, this is the way we should do it. My sites are doing it this way. This is the way your site should be doing it. And that's not necessarily the case all the time. And so having to be right sometimes, or perceiving that your way is the right way, causes issues. Conflicting goals. So one of your supervisor tells you that speed is the most important. It's more important than anything else, while another tells you that quality is more important. So real quick here, disclaimer. If you have employees that are being managed by multiple supervisors, one helpful hint would be make sure those supervisors get on the same page when they're delegating work, when they are giving tasks to those employees, because conflicting goals, man, that's putting your team in a real precarious situation. I have one manager telling me, get it done quickly. I have one manager saying, take your time, make sure it's quality. What do? I can make an employee really stressed or angry. Pressures. So it's kind of like goals, but with a time crunch. So one of your supervisors tells you that his assignment must be your first priority, and the other one tells you the same thing. So same idea. You got multiple supervisors asking one employee to do one thing or another. So pressures are a cause of conflict in the workplace. Roles. So this is where turf wars come into it. But you're given an assignment that ventures into another coworker's territory, or that you feel it should be given to someone else. And so if you were with us during our webinar on building effective work teams, we talked about the importance of clearly laying out people's roles, especially when you're working on a team. Making sure everybody understands what they're responsible for, who's responsible for this, who's responsible for that, because turf wars are very serious conflicts in the workplace. People get offended, people get defensive if they see others stepping into their territory. They might be worried that, hey, if I allow somebody to do this, then what am I needed for? So, I don't want somebody to ask, are you important to the position or to the company? No, so very serious conflicts can come from turf wars. So really make sure people's roles are clear and they understand what they're responsible for. I'm all for helping each other out, being a team player, but if people are constantly doing things they're not supposed to, or being given items that employees feel like it's not their responsibility can cause some issues in the workplace. Personal values. So what am I talking about here? Maybe you're given an assignment that you're not comfortable with ethically. I volunteered for a nonprofit, and I remember one of the volunteers that I enjoyed hanging around and enjoyed participating in activities with. She did not believe in alcohol consumption. She was a recovering alcoholic, and she stayed far away from all forms of alcohol. And I remember one particular fundraiser, the volunteers, we were volunteering for this nonprofit, and she was given the assignment of serving wine during the fundraiser. And this was a source of conflict for her. One, she supports the nonprofit. It was a big fundraiser. She wanted to help them out. But two, ethically, she did not feel comfortable with serving wine to folks. And so are you possibly asking your employees or asking people that you work with to do things that they're uncomfortable with? Changing policies and procedures is the last one. So you're told to do something one way and then told to do it a different way. You know, policies and procedures change in the workplace all the time. Change is not easy for folks. Routine is easy. Habits are easy. Those are comfortable. Whenever we have to change our routine, change the way we do things, it's scary. And one of the reasons it's scary is because when you're changing something, you're changing a policy, this is the way we used to do it, this is the way we're going to do it now, that might imply that the way we used to do it was incorrect, was wrong. Again, I'm defensive. The way I've been doing it for the last 5 years was the right way. Now you're telling me it's wrong? I have issues with that. So the question that you should have been asking yourself during those last couple slides are any of these causes present at your company? And the second question is, are you the cause of any of those? Before we even get into conflict resolution models, if you can identify areas that you're potentially creating angry employees or creating stressful situations for your work environment, eliminate them. Do your best to switch it up. Let me go back to the copier example. I'm a printer hawk, and I realized that. And when I would go and get my stuff from the printer, people would give me sighs or groans, or they would actually tell me, Justin, you're always on this printer. I need to get my stuff done. And so I realized that's causing issues at the workplace. So what can I do to prevent those issues? Well, I just changed the times when I made my copies. I typically try to make my copies now during lunch periods from 12 to 1. Most people are gone at lunch. The copier's not being used. Boom. I can have it for a whole hour, or I can stay late after work or come in early. But during the really, really busy times at work, I don't send 50 copies of a PowerPoint to the printer because I know it's going to cause some issues. So be proactive. All right. Other sources of conflict. Here's a news flash for you in case you didn't know. Extra, extra, read all about it. Our differences are often a major source of conflict. Even if we can learn to avoid the previous 8 causes that we just talked about, we still have an uphill battle because everything that makes us who we are is often a major source of conflict. What am I talking about? Our personality, our age, culture, gender differences can cause issues in the workplace. We are walking problems. All right. That's a little dramatic. No. But everything that makes us who we are, all those differences, all those unique qualities that we have can cause issues if we're not careful. Talk briefly about some of those. So during our first webinar, I believe, Robin went over communication styles. She went over the different personality types. These are just some very broad general terms. I don't want to peg anyone, but these are pretty accurate. Robin uses a personality profile called DISC. It's a very world-renowned personality profile. Tons of companies use it. Tons of trainers use it. And DISC is an acronym, D-I-S-C. And that kind of illustrates your personality. And I'm not going to get too much into it, but let's just briefly go over them. If you were here for the first webinar, you might have identified with one of these. If you're not, you might be able to identify as I'm giving some very quick summaries of the personalities. So dominant doers, that's the D. These people place emphasis on accomplishing fast results, the bottom line. They're very confident. They're all about getting stuff done. And so while they're getting stuff done, they maybe don't choose their words carefully. And so it's all about time. It's all about action, action, action. So they're very blunt. They're very honest. They're very direct and to the point. And so how does that cause conflict with others? Well, these people can be seen as rude, disrespectful, uncaring. Not necessarily that they are rude, disrespectful, or uncaring. It's that they're just being perceived that because of their communication style, because of their personality. That causes issues. I don't want to work with somebody that's rude or disrespectful. The initiator influencer, that's the I in DISC. This group of personality characteristics, they like to place emphasis on influencing or persuading others. They have the gift for gab. They're very open and they have lots of relationships. And this is the type of group of people that enjoy coming to work. They want to have fun at work. They want to get their job done, but they want to have fun while doing so. They're the cheerleaders. They're the high energy. They're the ooh-rah-rah people. Okay. Now, how could that group possibly cause any conflict for people in the workplace? They want to have fun. They're the joking ones. They're the high energy. They want to have lots of relationships and friendships at work. They can't possibly cause conflict, can they? I'm a little biased towards that group because I'm in this group. I am an initiator influencer, but I do have to be honest with myself, and I will be honest with you. We can cause a lot of conflict for people. How? Well, maybe we talk too much. Maybe we aren't taken very seriously because we joke around a lot or we like to have fun. Some people, believe it or not, just want to come to work, get their job done, and go home. They don't need all the chit-chat. They don't need all the activities. They don't need all the conversations. They just want to come in and get their work done. So that causes conflict for some people. Steady satisfiers place emphasis on cooperation, status quo. They're very sincere. They're very dependable. This group actually despises conflict. They don't want any conflict. They run away from conflict. The ways they run away from conflict is they're very agreeable. They can't say no. All right. And so how could the steady satisfiers that hate conflict cause conflict? Well, there are a couple people in my previous work life that would frustrate me because I know they have an opinion and I know they maybe disagree with it because I can see it on their face, I can see it in their body language, but they just don't say anything. They say, yes, we're okay. They don't want to rock the boat. That's frustrating. I can see something is wrong. Just tell me. But they despise conflict so much that they would be unhappy before they bring it up. They will internalize it so much before they bring it up. But the problem with this group is they keep it in, they keep it in, they keep it in, and eventually they erupt like a volcano. And so that is a source of conflict, of course, whenever they erupt like a volcano. But like I said before, but just being yes people could be frustrating. The last group is conscientious critics. They place emphasis on quality and accuracy, expertise and competency. They're all about the facts. It's very black and white for them. No emotions. Typically, they're all about, does this make sense? Is this rational? Okay. They don't go with their gut feeling. Okay. They have to see the data. They have to see the analysis. They want to make sure everything's by the book. Those are good people to have. Very good people to have at work. How do they cause conflict for others? Well, again, they can be considered cold because they don't take into account other people's feelings or opinions. Okay, so our personalities are a source of conflict. Gender differences. I don't think I have to go into this too much, but women and men are different. And at work, those differences can cause issues. We've given you some examples. Men, typically quiet listeners, women, verbal listeners. What am I talking about? Well, I don't want to stereotype everyone, but in general, men, we listen a little bit more quieter. We can sit there with our hands folded, eye contact to you, and not say a word. Not even nod our head in agreement. We can just sit there and listen. Women, on the other hand, maybe they're listening, but while they're listening, they're very audible. They're saying, yes, I understand, yeah, and they're nodding their head. How does that cause conflict? Well, I've been told by one person, my wife, when I'm sitting there quietly listening to her with my hands folded, eye contact on her, she's told me, you're not listening to me. I said, yes, I am. I'm sitting here. I'm looking at you. I'm listening. She says, you're not saying anything. You're not nodding your head in agreement. And on the opposite side, verbal listeners, women, some men could feel like you're being disrespectful and you're interrupting them by saying, aha, yes, I understand. Oh, yes, I agree. And so that's just one example. Being direct versus indirect, giving information versus asking questions. I don't think I need to get into it too much, but just men and women, our differences can cause issues in the workplace. Cultural differences. Okay, look at this quote. I love this quote. It has been observed that one, a diverse workforce can be a strategic organizational asset. Yes, having different people from different backgrounds, different experiences, different worldviews, that can be a plus. That can be a positive. But on the flip side, very different people tend to engage in very intense conflicts, which can become an organizational liability. Okay? Typically, we tend to deal with people that are like us. And when there are people that aren't like us, maybe we don't understand why they act this way or they say that. We don't understand their culture very much, and that can cause issues at our company if we're not careful, and if we don't handle it appropriately. Age differences, yes. I think we have 5 generations in the workplace today, the most we've ever had in the history of our world, 5. And as a supervisor, you might supervise an older employee, maybe closer to retirement. You might supervise a younger employee, fresh out of college, fresh out of high school. And if both of those employees are working in close proximity to each other, there can be some stressors out there. What am I talking about? In training, I get all kinds of examples. Typically, older employees say younger employees don't have a work ethic. Right? Older employees are used to going to their job and they just put their nose to the grindstone and work, 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 work. Younger employees, you see them, they're checking their cell phones. They're chit-chatting with other people. And so that, to an older employee, is you don't have a work ethic. On the other side, the younger employee might think, hey, I got my work done. I'm effective. I'm efficient. And yeah, I check my cell phone. Yeah, I update my Facebook at work. I got my stuff done. It's all about getting the job done. It's not about the amount of hours that I put in. It's not a work that I complete. So that's just one minor, not minor, but that's just one issue that can cause conflict between age generations. So I'm done with all the negative stuff. Man, I feel like a negative Nelly. Now that we've identified sources of conflict, let's talk a little bit about the different models of conflict resolution and maybe one that you typically fall into. So there's 5 different models: avoid, accommodate, compete, compromise, and collaborate. If you do your research, if you go out and get a book on managing conflict in the workplace, it's typically you're going to see these 5. You might see them condensed down to 4. But this is what the researchers say are ways to handle conflict in the workplace. So briefly, I'm going to go over each model, but I am going to spend a little bit more time on collaborate because that's a model that, if possible, you want to try to use as much as possible. It's a way for people to both get a win in the situation. But anyway, I'll get to there. Let's talk a little bit about avoid. So the avoiding method is a way of handling conflict by making an active decision not to handle the conflict. You might be saying, Justin, that's not a very effective tool. You're saying I can resolve conflict by not addressing it? Well, yeah, kind of. The avoid method is best used for situations that maybe aren't work-related and should be solved through another means. The avoiding method is used primarily for unimportant or non-work-related issues, like I mentioned, buying time until a resolution can be reached. And that's really the one I want to focus on. Sometimes when you're handling a conflict or you're in a conflict with somebody, you just need time. It's not a good idea to try to handle it or resolve it right then. I always think back to my childhood with my father. Whenever I upset him or I made a mistake, he would kind of use this method. He would avoid me for a little bit. And what I mean by that is he was so emotional or it was so heated or the issue was so fresh that he would take a couple hours, maybe take 24 hours to get his thoughts collected, to have an idea on how he wants to resolve the situation before coming and addressing it with me. And so sometimes you just need to avoid the conflict. Take a break, calm your emotions down, gather your thoughts before you address it. So you avoid it. Not necessarily I'm going to forget it completely, although there may be some instances, yeah, I'm just going to forget it completely. It's maybe a personal issue that's happened at work and I don't really want to deal with it. I'm not going to forget it completely, but mainly you want to avoid to give yourself a little bit more time until a resolution can be reached. Accommodate, what's that? Well, accommodate is, the accommodating method is a way of handling conflict by allowing the other side to win. Okay, so you're going to give up. You're going to give in a little bit. Okay, they're going to win. Okay, so this is a good method for making decisions on what can be let go versus what needs another method. And so there's some times when you can just say, you know what, I'm going to accommodate. It's not a big deal. It's not a huge issue. It's a big issue to them. I'm just going to let it go. I'm going to let you win. I'm going to resolve the conflict. We're going to move past it. I'm not going to spend any more time, any more energy on it. I'm just going to accommodate. It's really good at keeping the peace, okay, and keeping the relationship. Now the problem with the accommodate one or the let it go model is you really got to be emotionally mature to handle this. Because if you let it go, you let them win or whatever the case may be, but you hold a grudge secretly and just negative thoughts are coming every time you see this person because you accommodated them in their situation. Well, you didn't really resolve the conflict thing. You really got to be emotionally mature enough to say, you know what, I'm going to let it go. It's not a big deal. I'm going to move past it. We're going to, our relationship isn't going to take a hit because I accommodated. But again, what can I let go, or do I want to keep the peace by accommodating with somebody? Compete. The competing method involves handling the conflict through unilateral decision making. What am I talking about? This is most appropriately used by managers and leaders in the workplace. So basically, I'm going to win. There's no discussion. There's no collaboration. There's no let me hear your side. This conflict needs to be resolved. It needs to be resolved in this manner. So I'm going to compete. This is a good method to use if you need a quick action for something. This is a good method to use when there's no compromise or debate that needs to take place. This is company policy. You have to be at work on time. There's no if and buts about it. I'm going to compete. I'm going to make sure you understand that you need to be to work on time. There's no gray area there. This is also a good method if you, sometimes you got to make tough decisions as supervisors, and so you're just going to have to put your head down, make the best decision that you feel possible for your company, and just kind of go with it. And so competing is actually a resolution model as well. Compromise. What is compromise? Well, the compromising method attempts to resolve a conflict by identifying a solution that is partially satisfactory to both parties. So basically, it's not 100% for both parties. It's not everybody's going to get their way. Everybody's going to win-win. It's not that. What it is we're going to give a little bit to get. Both parties are going to give a little bit to get. The compromising method is primarily used for resolving issues of moderate to high importance, finding a solution that involves equal power and strong commitment on both sides. We both need to have buy-in to this. We both need to be on the same page. We both need to feel good when we leave the situation, so we're going to compromise a little bit. Or you can use the compromise method whenever situations you need just a temporary fix. Okay? So until we can resolve this completely and thoroughly, let's compromise. Let's meet halfway. It's the whole meeting halfway. Meet me halfway. Okay? That might not be our end result. This might not be our final solution, but to keep peace, to keep us working and moving forward, we're going to have to meet halfway. So you're going to use the compromise method. And then finally, collaborate. Collaborating method involves cooperating with the other party to understand their concerns, and you're expressing your own concerns in an effort to find a win-win situation. Okay? I'm going to sit down, I'm going to hear you out, I'm going to listen to you, I'm going to understand your concerns. And then in part, you're going to listen to me, you're going to allow me to express my issues, my concerns, and we're going to come up with a situation together where we both win and we both get exactly what we need. So what is this method good for? Well, it's good for getting cooperation from your team. It's a great way of getting different perspectives and learning from situations. And whenever you were able to work through conflict with another person, even though it might be difficult, it might feel awkward at first, I've always seen that if you're able to work through conflict with another person, your relationship typically tends to improve after that. Okay? And whenever you're able to collaborate, get there and really understand the other person, understand why they're asking this, why they're doing this, you really improve your relationship moving forward. And that's the other thing. You want to handle conflict in the workplace, you want to squash it. But while you're doing that, while you're resolving that conflict, you can really reap the benefits from people really getting to know the other party, understanding them fully. Relationships tend to improve, okay, when you have to work through a conflict as a team. All right, so let's take a quick look at this. So, just at your computer, I'm going to ask you a couple questions. Maybe you jot down the answers. I want to see if you can kind of match the conflict resolution model to the particular issue that I have listed here on the screen. So let's start with number one. You and a coworker just got into an argument. Tomorrow is the annual company picnic, and you will both be there. What type of strategy do you think is appropriate to use? I can't check your answers, but take some time. What do you think? Is it avoid, accommodate, compete, compromise, collaborate? What do you think? Well, in this particular situation, I would say you would want to avoid. You would want to avoid that particular coworker. All right. One, you just got in an argument, so it's a little fresh. You're a little emotional, maybe. Still, emotions are running high. You're at a company picnic. Is a company picnic really the place that you want to sit down and try to hash out this conflict? Probably not. Company picnic's there for a celebration. It's there meant for a good time. people to enjoy it, to have fun. So you want to avoid. Now remember, avoid isn't necessarily, hey, I'm going to forget about it. No, this is probably an argument that we need to resolve. We need to resolve this issue between each other, between ourselves. But the picnic's not the best place to do it. So I'm going to avoid for a temporary period of time. If you're in line to get your nachos and get your cold drink for lunch, I'm going to probably go play, a basketball game. Go throw darts at balloon, right? Whatever your company picnic looks like. If you go and play that game, I'm going to probably go find something else to do. All right. I just know being around that person at that particular time is probably not the best thing to do. I'm probably not going to go up to them and say, hey, let's sit down and hash it out there. I'm going to avoid, and we'll find another time to come back and work through this. Number 2 says your manager came to work upset and just yelled at you to turn down your radio. What do you think you want to do? Avoid, accommodate, compete, compromise, collaborate. Well, this one I'm probably going to say it's your manager. They're upset about something. Who knows? They're obviously upset, and they asked you or they yelled at you to turn down your radio. I would probably say accommodate. Okay, 2 things. They're your boss. The second thing is maybe they're just in a little funk. They're in a bad mood, okay? Normally they don't yell at you. So yeah, I'm not going to say, what's your deal? This is my radio. I can listen to it however I like. Or you never had this problem before. I'm not going to compete with them, okay? I'm not going to avoid them and just not do anything about my radio. Nope. They're obviously upset about something. Let me accommodate. Let me let them win, okay, because it's not a big deal. It's a one-time situation. I'm not going to worry about it. And I'm not going to hold a grudge. Remember, whenever you accommodate, you want to let them win, but you're doing it to keep goodwill and peace. You don't want to hold that grudge against them. Number 3 says, one of your subordinates just knowingly and willingly violated a safety policy. One of your subordinates just knowingly and willingly violated a safety policy. Which strategy do you feel is appropriate to use? Probably compete. I would say compete with this one. Remember, compete is we are going to make this happen, and you're going to do this. You're going to listen to me. And if you knowingly violated a safety policy and you willingly violated a safety policy, I'm not going to collaborate with you. I'm not going to accommodate. No, I'm not going to allow you to work unsafe. So you're going to follow this policy. And if you don't follow this policy, there's going to be other discipline that's going to come from it. I'm going to compete. That is, I think, the most appropriate strategy to use in that one. And then the 4th one is your office mate is a neat freak who continuously asks you to clean up your workspace. Does this happen? It's happened to me before. Not that I'm a messy person, but I do have a little bit of a messy desk, and I used to sit next to somebody that was just super tidy. I mean, if you looked at their desk, it looked like it was their first day on the job. There was nothing on it. Everything had their spot. Everything was very well organized. It was just super, super tidy. So what strategy do you think you would try to employ here? Number 4, your neat freak office mate wants you to clean up your workspace. What are you going to do? I would probably say compromise. I'm not going to accommodate. I'm not just going to give in and let them win. I can't be as clean as them, but I might compromise. I might give in a little bit I might meet them halfway. I can tidy up a little bit. I have to work with that person every day, and I want them to be upset at me, but I'm going to let them know that their expectation of clean I might not be able to reach. But you know what? Instead of having my old soda cans and my old Rockstar energy drinks sitting on my desk, I might throw those away. Instead of having paper, just stacks and stacks of old paper and projects on my desk, I might file those away. Okay? And in turn, what they're going to do is they're going to be okay with that. All right, you met me halfway. I'm not going to freak out about it. I'm not going to hit you up anymore about it. You met me halfway. And then number 5 is your quarterly bonus is not nearly as much as you thought it would be. Okay? Number 5, what do you want to do then? Your quarterly bonus is not nearly as much as you thought it would be. That one you're probably going to collaborate. You're going to work with your supervisor. You're going to work with your employer. You're not going to compete with them, but you're going to work with them to try to brainstorm some possible solutions to figure out why it's not as high as it should have been. You're going to get on the same page. You don't want to put them in a losing situation by competing with them. You definitely don't want to avoid the situation, right? Because you feel like you've earned that bonus, so you need to get that reconciled. But you're probably going to work with them. You're both going to work together to get a win-win situation. All right? So I don't know if you got all of those correct, but hopefully they made sense to you. Now what we're going to do is going to talk about the steps you need to take or you can take to collaborate. And we're going to break this down, and we're looking good on time. So we're going to break this down, and I'm going to give you a real-life example, and we'll hopefully this will be able to help you out. But whenever you're collaborating with somebody, the first thing you want to do is make sure that you're working with that person and you establish a mutual goal. So you have an issue, you have a problem, you have a situation you have to work on, you're going to resolve it. You want to sit down with that person and think about, we both need to win, we both want to get what we need to get, so let's establish a mutual goal. Let's look at what we both want to get from this situation. The second thing you want to do is separate the people from the problems. This is huge. This is really huge because this is where not handling conflict can really effectively can really harm your organization. As a lot of times people look at the other person as the problem. They don't separate the person from the problem. And so it's you are the problem, you're the one that's making my life miserable, you're the one that's upsetting me, I am angry with you, and you are the issue. Well, if you have that view in mind, then you can never really solve the problem because the person is the problem. If they're going to work there, they're always going to be there and they're always going to be the problem. So what you really want to try to do is try to separate the person from the problem. What's the issue here? Is it John? Is he the issue? No, it's not the issue. It's something he's doing that's the issue. If I'm able to separate the person from the problem, I think I'm able to look at John and not have those negative emotions. I think I'm able to attack the situation and not John. I'm able to focus on the situation and not John. So separate the people from the problems. The third one is focus. The third step is focus on interests, not positions. Okay? You want to try to understand what is it that they want and why do they want that. Positions are demands. Okay? Don't focus on the demands. Focus on the reason behind the demands. Okay, the reason John is wanting me to do this or does this is because of this. You're drilling it down. You're drilling it down. Again, I separated the person from the problem. Now I look at the problem. Why is he demanding this? Let me kind of investigate that. Let me drill down. Okay, the reason he's asking this is because it affects his job in this way, whatever the case may be. Okay, again, it helps me put a couple walls and barriers between the person and the problem. The fourth step is this. Okay, now that I've identified the reasons behind the issue, I'm going to generate alternatives. I'm going to brainstorm. Okay, I'm going to brainstorm for mutual gains. We're both going to get something out of it. And here's the big one. Don't limit yourself when you brainstorm. Don't do that. Brainstorming is just throwing all the ideas out on the table, whether they seem like they're ridiculous or not. Don't eliminate ideas as you're throwing them out. Brainstorming is, this is all the solutions that we come up with. And then the next step is you're going to evaluate those ideas, those solutions. You're going to evaluate them and see which one works best for your situation. Okay? And then finally, when you end the whole, after you resolve the issue, think about it as I've gained something. We don't have this conflict anymore. I've gained something. Don't think about the things that you lost, the things that you didn't get. Have that positive mind frame when you end that resolution. All right, so let me just give you a real life example, and then maybe you can see the steps in action. Maybe that'll help you out too. So I used to work for a company. We used to do after school programs here in Kern County. And we expanded our programs to the west side of Kern County, and we didn't have our own facility, so we rented out a recreation facility, and it was great. It was a great partnership. They were using their building when we didn't need to use it, or vice versa. We were using their building when they didn't need it, and so it worked out for both parties. We rented space during their non-operational hours. During their operational hours, we were out of there. And so it was a match made in heaven until a couple months into the arrangement, we noticed a conflict popped up. Something was going on. The owner of the facility came to us and they required our after-school program to move our program and all of our members into the different rooms. They had a big giant area and then they had small breakout rooms, but they required us to move our program and our members into those smaller rooms at 4:30. Now, mind you, we rented the facility until 6, because at 6:15, 6:30 they would use it. So we were supposed to have that room until that whole facility until 6. And so the owner started coming to us and saying, hey, you're going to move all your kids into these smaller rooms at 4:30. And the reason that they did that is because our facility wasn't being cleaned. All right, so that was the conflict. So we had to sit down and we did some collaboration. What's the mutual goal? Well, the owner of the facility wanted to make sure his facility looked great for his customers that arrived at 6, and what we wanted was our program to continue to run until the end of the day, because we wanted our parents to come and pick up their kids and see their kids having fun. It was impossible for their kids to have fun in those small rooms. So our goal was, we both wanted what's best for our customers. They wanted their customers to be happy. We wanted our customers to be happy. Here's how we did it. We separated the people from the problem. So I didn't look at the owner of the facility as the problem. I looked at the problem as the problem. The facility wasn't being cleaned as expected, okay? Or we actually had staff members staying later than normal business hours to finish cleaning, and impacted their business, all right? Thus leading to the owner of the facility requiring the club to move into this. That was the problem. It wasn't the owner. It wasn't that he was a slumlord or anything like that. It was that the facility wasn't getting cleaned. Again, I'm going to focus on his interest, not the position. So again, the reason he wanted us to move into the rooms is so he can clean and get ready for the day. A messy facility made the company look bad and impacted their business. All right? So that's the whole reason. It wasn't that he hated kids. It was because the facility was left dirty. So let's brainstorm some solutions. Here are the solutions that we came up with, some possible solutions. We would start our arts and crafts. We would stop our arts and crafts at 4:30 and keep one staff member on from 5 to 6 for cleaning purposes only, because we realized arts and crafts was a messy thing and it was requiring a lot of time for cleanup. Or we can just hire an additional staff member just to make sure the facility was clean. So hire somebody else on to do some more janitorial stuff. Or the owner of the facility could adjust their hours slightly to allow the club to clean up after the program, so start at 6:30 instead of 6. And so we ended up choosing the first solution. Okay, we evaluated it. We chose, hey, we're going to end arts and crafts at 4:30, keep one staff member on from 5 to 6 to clean up. That's the most effective cost strategy for both of us. Then we talked about, okay, what did we get out of it? So we resolved the conflict. Well, what we got out of it was we were able to continue to run our program the way we wanted it. He was able to run his program the way he wanted it. We're not thinking about, oh, we have to end arts and crafts early at 4:30. He's not thinking about, not letting his staff members in there early to clean up. It was a win-win for everybody. So those are the steps in collaboration. Now, I'm looking at our time here. We have about 6 minutes left, and we have several slides to get to. So I just want to touch on a couple of these. And just a disclaimer here, this session is typically a 2 to 3 hour session, so we're trying to condense it down in an hour module for you. But you do have all the PowerPoint slides. But let me quickly go over the last couple slides to finish up our presentation. So typically when we're in conflict, we become angry. And a lot of times people think anger is a bad emotion. It's not good to have anger. And actually, it's the opposite. We have anger for a reason. Anger is a valid emotion that helps us destroy barriers, that helps us overcome things, that give us the energy to solve problems. Think about it. The reason we have a caveman on our PowerPoint slide is because think back to the caveman days. Dinosaurs would come around. Animals would come around, try to eat cavemen, so they need to get angry to defend themselves. Other cavemen would come around to try to steal their cave. They need to get angry to defend themselves, to keep their cave, keep their home, keep their shelter. Anger is a very valid emotion. The problem is we don't know how to express anger effectively. So what does ineffective anger look like? Ineffective expressions of anger? Well, physical. stuff, throwing things, slamming doors, assault, murder. Does that stuff happen at work? Unfortunately, it can. Just a couple months ago, unfortunately, we saw firsthand on the news a real life example of this. Two news reporters on the East Coast that were murdered on live television by an old disgruntled employee because they were angry. Now, I think that employee was crazy, mentally ill as well, but ineffective expressions of anger in the workplace can result into violence in the workplace. Ineffective expression of anger is emotional stuff. So you're doing silent treatment, verbal abuse, going on tirades, holding grudges, all that stuff, gossiping, and then finally self-abuse. Too much food, alcohol, or drugs to cope with your anger. So just know, anger is a valid emotion, but you have to learn how to express it. Here's some effective ways to express it. First off, think about why you're angry. Why are you upset? Why is this making you feel this way? I like to keep a log. Okay, I don't do this all the time, but there's some times that I get this weird emotion. I feel angry for some reason. I don't really know what it is. I like to journal about it, write it down. Then I can look back at my previous entries and maybe find a correlating theme, something, hey, these are in common. Maybe this is what's pushing my buttons, right? And then think before you speak, all right? Be very careful with the words that you say. Words have a lot of meaning. They have a lot of power. Whenever you're expressing your anger to someone, be brief to the point. Give them specific examples. Don't harp and harp and harp on them. Don't use overbroad general terms with them. Be able to articulate what's upsetting you. If they don't know what's upsetting you, they're not going to be able to fix the issue. They're not going to be able to fix the problem. I like to use I messages, or we encourage you to use I messages to talk about your feelings, talk about your perceptions, but make sure that you understand that they're your opinions. You don't want to point the finger at someone. Okay, use perception checks. Use I messages. I feel that you made a mistake. I feel that you're not carrying your weight on the team. I feel like you're purposely trying to make my job more difficult. It's not you're wrong. You made a mistake, or you're trying to make my life miserable. Not pointing the finger at the person. This is my perception. This is my opinion. As soon as you start pointing your finger at somebody, you start making your opinion, you try to turn it into fact. Whenever people are throwing facts at somebody, the recipient of that might want to go on the defense. They might become defensive, then what you got there is an argument. Then they start throwing jabs back at you, and you have this back and forth. It's not an effective way to express your anger. Here's some other tips to effectively express your anger. I just want to touch on a couple of them, but the one I really want to touch on is listen intently. Give the other person a chance to talk. Once you've said your piece, give the other person a chance to talk. Hear them out. Don't interrupt them. Don't do something else while they're talking. And the final thing, as everything with conflict resolution, is make a plan to solve the problem. Don't just spew venom at them. Sit down, make a plan with them. Create an action plan to solve the issue. Remember, Robin went over this during the first webinar, but if you weren't there, the reason we communicate is to get a desired response. So whatever you're going to say to somebody, however you're going to sit down and address them, think about your communication. Put a lot of time, a lot of effort into tailoring your words, tailoring your message to get the type of response that you want. If you want them to be accepting of your opinion, if you want them to try to correct their behavior and help you out, what words are you going to say to elicit that response? If you want them to be angry and you want to get into a shouting match, then yeah, do the opposite. If you don't want that, what words are you going to use to get the response that you need from them? We talked a little bit about expressing anger. How do you respond to people's anger? Here are some examples for you. For the sake of time, I can't touch each one of them. I'm sorry. But you have them there on your PowerPoint. I think it's pretty clear cut, black and white. I want to get to this. Skip a couple slides here. I want to get to this. I'm going to end on this one. Sometimes you have to mediate conflict. Sometimes you have to mediate conflict between employees. Sometimes you have to be the referee on the side of the top right-hand corner of this PowerPoint slide. It's never fun to mediate conflict, but it's an important role as a supervisor. It's important if you do it correctly, you can really help people resolve their problems and, again, strengthen their relationships and move forward and help them be successful, in turn help the organization be successful. So how do you do that? First off, you want to make sure you choose the appropriate setting. What am I talking about? You want to do something in private. You want to make sure that you're doing it maybe in neutral territory. You don't want to have it in somebody's office. You want to maybe find a conference room or somewhere where, people don't have home turf advantage against the other person. Set the ground rules. What do I mean by that? Kind of lay out how it's going to go. You're going to speak. You're going to listen. When you're done speaking, they're going to get a chance to speak, and you're going to listen. We don't want to interrupt. We don't want to do the point the finger, point the blame. We want to use I messages, but you're setting the ground rules for them. And yes, you do have to set ground rules for adults. I know it might sound weird, or it might make you think, what in the world? Who am I working with? But yes, when people are emotional, when people are upset, when they're angry, when there's a situation, a conflict to deal with, sometimes they're irrational. And so yes, you even have to, remind them, hey, don't use disrespectful terms. Don't interrupt somebody. Don't roll your eyes. Don't slouch. You have to remind them of that. You have to coach them through that. And the final thing is maintain a neutral position, meaning don't take sides. People can tell when you're taking sides, and that creates a bigger divide. And once I find out that maybe you're on their side, then maybe I'm going to shut down. It's no use because you're favoring them over me. Maintain a neutral position. Help them identify the problem, agree on the problem, brainstorm with them, just like on the collaboration aspect of it. You're basically doing the collaboration conflict resolution model with them during the mediation. Help them brainstorm possible solutions. This is how we're both going to get what we need to be successful here. Once you brainstorm it, make a plan. Put it down in writing. And then not only have them agree on the problem and make a plan, but when you send them back out into the office to start working on that plan, to start working to create better relationships, check back with them. It shouldn't just be like a one shot, here's a pill, you're fixed, good to go. No, it should be, I need to check back with you in a week. I need to check back with you in a month just to make sure everything's going as planned and we're following our plan. Okay? So I want to end with this quote from Ronald Reagan. I love it. Peace is not the absence of conflict. It's the ability to handle conflict by peaceful means. Remember what we talked about when we started this webinar. Conflict can move, conflicting ideas can move an organization forward, can create new things, can open up people's minds. But the problem is we don't necessarily handle it appropriately. And so don't look at conflict as necessarily a bad thing. Trying to harness it, try to resolve it. I mean, as supervisors, that's our responsibility. Is we set the tone for our organization, we set the tone for our employees, and so realize that conflict's going to happen. We talked about all the things that cause conflict. It's going to happen in the workplace. How can we use it? How we can turn it a negative thing into a positive? And so I'm sorry for rushing towards the end there. I apologize, but hopefully you're able to get a couple things from today's webinar. We have a couple upcoming webinars. Robin's going to be back in the saddle here for a couple of these. But I really enjoyed spending some time, even though it's through the internet, through a computer screen. I'm going to give you my contact information. If there are any questions that you had that I wasn't able to get to, or you'd like more information on the different types of trainings that we offer at WorkLogic, there's my email, there's my phone number. We appreciate your business. We appreciate you joining us today. Feel free to join us again in the future. Contact us if you need anything. And remember, the PowerPoint slides are in your upper right-hand window there. Make sure to download those and print those out if you're interested. And I wish you a great rest of your week. And please let me know if there's any way I can help you out. I'm going to check the questions box, see if there's any questions. I don't see any. So thank you, and have a great day.